Hi and welcome. I'm your host, Paul, and this is the Property Side Hustle podcast. If you're new here, hope you enjoy the show. But what we do normally is we talk about property strategies, we talk about making money via property, investing, building real long-term wealth right here in the UK, but without the need for the expensive property training and the gurus out there. So today's episode, I want to pull back the curtain and show you what some of my clients are working on right now in 2026. And these are real people doing real deals using very normal property investment strategies. And I want to share their stories with you because I think it's important to see what's possible when you've got the right level of support and you mix that with taking action. Now, these aren't unicorn results. I'm not going to share, silly results with you or anything like that. These aren't people who got lucky or who had some massive advantage or who had loads of money available to them. These are just normal, everyday people, some starting out from zero, some with a little bit of experience, and some with lots of experience with portfolios already, but they were all tired of trying to do it all on their own. And they wanted help and advice on their next steps in property. And I'm going to introduce you to three of my mentees that I work with, three of my one-to-one clients. And first up, we've got Alex, who quit his day job after doing one property deal. And more on that in a second. Then we've got Rhian, who's an experienced investor who's scaling a BRRR business, which is buy, refurb, refinance, rent. And she's now pivoting into serviced accommodation with her last purchase, which was an auction property, which we'll get into a bit later on. And then last, we've got Jack and John, two chartered builders based in London who've gone from sourcing deals to running a site evaluation business for developers and home extenders. Now, each of these stories have an amazing lesson or a set of lessons, actually. And hopefully by the end of this episode and this podcast, you're going to see yourself in one of them. And you're going to realize that you can do this too. So go and grab yourself a brew or a coffee and let's get into it. So let's start with Alex, because Alex's story is one of my favorites, and it perfectly illustrates something that I say to people all the time. You don't need to wait until you feel ready. You just need to take action. You just need to start. So Alex came to me about, it must be 3 years ago now at least, and he was working a full-time job, earning decent money after finishing uni, but he was absolutely just not enjoying working life. And I think like many people, Alex wanted more than his day job or career was ever going to give him. Because there's a ceiling, isn't there? You can only go so far and you can only earn so much when you exchange your time for money in a job. Now, he could see his future planned out, but he wanted more, which is common. We all want the best for ourselves, don't we? And I think many people in that situation, they, in their spare time, will research things online, they'll read books, they'll watch content, they'll sign up to webinars, maybe take a course or two. There's something stopping you from moving forwards, even after doing all of that. Why? Well, in Alex's case, because he didn't feel ready, he didn't have enough money saved, he didn't have enough experience, he was waiting for that perfect moment. And I hear this all the time from people, that they don't feel ready. They feel like they're just missing something. Now, for those of you who don't know, a joint venture or JV is where you partner up with somebody else who has the money. So you bring the deal, the expertise and the work, and then you split the profits, usually 50-50. So Alex went out and found a deal. It was a one-bedroom flat in London. It needed a bit of a refurb, nothing out the ordinary. And here's where it gets interesting. So Alex spotted an opportunity that most investors would have missed. Now, the flat had a really inefficient layout. It was a big one-bedroom flat, but with a bit of a reconfiguration, it could easily become a two-bedroom flat by moving the kitchen into the living space and then making what was the kitchen a second bedroom. And on top of that, the property had a short lease, and the lease had about, I think, 70 odd years left on it, or maybe even a bit less. And now for those of you that don't know, when a lease on a property drops below about 80 years, it starts to really affect the value of the property and the mortgageability of the property. So the value just plummets. So with that in mind, extending the lease back up to a good amount would add significant amounts of value to that property. Alex ran the numbers. He worked out that if he bought the flat, extended the lease, he configured the layout to make it from a 1-bed to turn it into a 2-bed, then that property, that flat would be worth a really nice amount of money and there was a lot of profit. So what was missing? Money. Alex didn't have the cash at that time to go and do it himself. So he went away and found a joint venture partner, basically someone with the cash who was looking for opportunities like that, but they didn't have the time to find deals themselves and they didn't want to get their hands dirty or get involved in it themselves. And he presented that deal to a JV partner. The JV partner absolutely loved it, liked how Alex worked, built up a great relationship with Alex, and the investor agreed to fund the purchase and the refurb. And Alex managed the whole project from start to finish, and he did an amazing job. Literally, Alex was born to be a project manager. You know, he does this stuff standing on his head really, really well. And when it was done, they sold the property and they split the profits 50-50. Now, Alex's share of the profit was about £37,000 from memory. And here's the thing. Alex didn't put a single penny of his own money into that deal. This was a deal that was zero money down for him. And another thing is, the investor, the JV partner, was also a part of our community. So this was a deal that utilised our own property community. And that deal gave Alex the confidence and the cash to quit his day job. And he's now doing property full time. He's completed several more projects over the last few years. And I've actually got a monthly call with him today in a few hours. And he WhatsApped me last week saying he booked a call and he said, we need to discuss a deal that he's secured at auction and another one, which is a big boy. So I don't know what that means. I'm looking forward to chatting with Alex later on and hearing about those new deals that he's working on. Now, what made that first deal for Alex work? Well, a few things, really. First, Alex didn't wait until he felt ready. He got mentored by myself. He took action and he made things happen. And that's the key. I always say to people, look, doers earn money. Doers get results. It's not about being the best or the most prepared or even the most intelligent. Action beats over planning and reading books and watching webinars and sitting on YouTube for days on end every single time. Action beats all of that. And second, he added value. He didn't just buy a property and hope that it would go up in value. He actively improved it, extended the lease, changed the layout, and that's how you make real money in property. You spot the opportunity and you take action. And third, he used other people's money. He didn't let a lack of cash stop him. He found a partner, structured a win-win deal, and he got it done. Now, somebody else in the same position as Alex might think, well, I don't have the money. All the doors are closed to me. So, why bother trying? I don't have the cash. And this just proves and underlines massively that a can-do attitude mixed with the right strategy and the right level of support, that can be life-changing. Now, if you want the full breakdown of Alex's deal, a step-by-step process of how he did it, then comment the word JV below if you're watching this on YouTube, and I'll send it to you. If you're listening to the podcast and you can't comment below because you're listening to the podcast, then check the show notes, click on the description, check the text there, and contact me and I'll send you the document. The document shares exactly what Alex did and how you could do the same, and it's free. So make sure you do that. Right. Let's move on to Rhian, a lovely Welsh lady who has the most amazing Welsh accent ever. Now, I love the TV show Gavin and Stacey. I mean, who doesn't love Gavin and Stacey? And if you don't, you're not my type of person at all. Turn this off and go away. But seriously, Gavin and Stacey, I love that show. And when I have my monthly calls with Rhian, it always just puts a smile on my face listening to her talk because of her accent. I love it. Now, Rhian's story, we digress. Rhian's story is a bit different because she's not a beginner. She's a very experienced property investor with a large portfolio of properties in South Wales. She was my first mentee to appear on Homes Under the Hammer on TV a few years back now. But here's the thing. Even experienced investors out there need support. Property can be a really lonely game. If it's just you on your own, you're stuck in your head with all your own thoughts going round and round, and it can be a lonely business. And I find that lots of investors out there, they just need someone to help them with systems, scaling, making sure that they're not leaving money on the table. So many investors do. And a lot of investors I work with just want someone else to chat through their decisions or projects and to get a kind of sanity check that they haven't missed anything, nothing slipped through. So Rhian came to me because she'd hit a bit of a plateau. She'd built up a really solid portfolio using the BRRR method, buy, refurb, refinance, rent. She was happy with it. She knew exactly what she was doing. She was making good money, but she felt like she was a bit stuck in a bit of a rut. And she was doing the same thing over and over again. And while it was working, she wanted to scale up. She knew she wasn't being as effective as she could be. And she wanted more cash flow, more leverage maybe. And she wanted to make sure that she was maximizing the assets that she already had. So we started having our regular video calls, and our focus has been on growth and systems mainly. Over the years, making sure that she's investing in the most effective way and not leaving any money on the table, like I said. Now, just before Christmas, we looked at a quirky deal together, shall we say, and it was a bit of a departure from our usual BRRR strategy. It was a property in a great location with a proven contractor Airbnb market, and the opportunity was to refurb the property and operate it then for serviced accommodation and target the local contractors in the area. Now, Rhian was a bit hesitant at first. One, because she'd never done serviced accommodation before. Two, because it was just outside of her comfort zone. But we ran the numbers together. We looked at the demand in the area, and it was clear that it was just a simple case of solving a local supply and demand issue. So she went for it. She put an offer in, post-auction, I think it was, and she bought the property. And she's now venturing into the SA space with the contractor angle. And I can't wait to see how that one comes to life in the next few months. And her focus this year, 2026, it's more on cash flow. It's more on leverage, making sure that her assets are maximized, that she already has in her portfolio, to make sure her existing portfolio is not missing out on any profits, which is so common with portfolio landlords, that they have assets sat there with huge sums of money that are low leveraged, and they're not using the money that's tied up in those properties. Now, what's the lesson here? First, it's having the right systems makes life easier, without a shadow of a doubt. And Rhian didn't need to learn a new property strategy from scratch. It wasn't about that. She just needed someone to help her refine her systems, optimize her processes, and make sure that she was making the most of every opportunity that she had. Second, sometimes pivoting is a good thing. Rhian had been doing BRRR for deals for years and years, built up a lovely portfolio. She was a full-time investor. She didn't have the day job. She just managed her portfolio. But by adding in serviced accommodation to her toolkit, if you like, she's opened up a whole new revenue stream that she didn't have before. And I can see personally, it's re-energized her business, and it's reignited her spark for investing, because doing the same thing over and over again, it can get a bit like painting by numbers. The process becomes boring after a while, but the results are actually still good. The BRRR method is still her bread and butter, obviously, but now she's got other potential things that she's looking at and she's doing, and options are good. Options are always a good thing. And next up, this is the final story I want to share with you. And this one's a bit different because it's not just about property, it's about business. So let me introduce you to Jack and John. So these guys are both chartered builders. In their day jobs, they work on large projects. And by large, we're talking £200 million developments. The big complex stuff most of us can't even begin to comprehend. But in the evenings and the weekends, they wanted to build something for themselves. So they started a property sourcing business initially, and we came up with a niche together, and they found a high net worth individual over in the US who was looking to invest in luxury properties in the UK. And they started out sourcing deals for this guy, finding off-market properties, packaging them up and presenting them And it worked. They built up a successful sourcing business, sold quite a few deals, and they were making decent money, but it was a bit sporadic. But then they started to realize that there was a bigger opportunity. Now, in their day jobs, they were doing, or they are doing, risk analysis and site evaluations for major building projects, amongst other things. And they started to see a massive gap in that market. Now, most people who go into refurb or a development project, they do it with way too many assumptions and not enough homework on risk analysis and due diligence and, making sure the numbers stack. In a nutshell, a lot of people don't de-risk properly. And as a result, now this is an amazing stat, and I'm not going to take credit for this. The guys found this out. And as this literally blew my mind when they shared this with me. 69% of all major refurbs and projects in the UK go over budget by up to 20%. 69% of projects. I mean, that's absolutely nuts. And that can completely wipe out your profit and turn what should have been a great project into, well, disaster. And we went through one yesterday, actually, together on our call, on our regular video call. And the client they're working with had a quote from a contractor that was all itemized, but there was so much missing from that quote that the client wasn't aware of, but it was the report brought this up. And that was a huge red flag, the fact that so much was missing. Now, armed with that knowledge, their client is now able to go back to that contractor and pull them up on the missing items to get a better, more detailed quote and a bit of clarification on the things that were missing. Just to make sure that the new quote actually does include everything and the numbers are correct. So the guys had an idea. What if they offered site evaluations, a kind of health check for pre-construction developers, and a service where they can come in, assess the site or project and identify all of the risks, and then help developers and home extenders de-risk before they even think about starting or putting a spade in the ground. And that's exactly what they've done. So for the last 8 months, we've been working really closely together to grow this new business. And they're now offering site evaluations to developers and people doing home renovations and extensions. And, to anyone who's thinking about a build and wants to make sure that they've got the ducks in a row from every conceivable angle, from like a legal standpoint, from a contractor standpoint, from a site standpoint, from every conceivable angle. And it's going brilliantly. It's going brilliantly. They're getting clients, they're making money, and they're doing work that's closely aligned with their expertise and their knowledge and their day jobs. Now, these reports come with an onboarding call. Then they go and create this highly detailed report when they've got all the documents that they need. And then there's another video call to talk you through what those risks are that the report pulled up. What's missing, where you need to take action, what your next steps are. So you have complete and utter clarity on the opportunity that you're looking at. And the report itself is designed to give you, obviously, a deep analysis and understanding on the project, but they can also help with procurement of finding a reputable contractor via a tendering process, and they do offer bespoke project management packages too. And I said to the guys yesterday on our call, I said, this business is so needed in the UK right now. With, that start, thinking of that start, most projects out there overspending, people just not doing their homework, people employing contractors without doing their homework on that contract and making sure they've got insurances in place, making sure the contracts that are used are the right contracts, etc., making sure you're not leaving yourself wide open to a world of pain. And there's way too many horror stories out there from people coming unstuck with, big refurbs and extensions for numerous reasons that could have been avoided if they'd just had access to something like that, like a health check. Now, I have regular video calls with these guys every month, and we discuss their next moves in the business, where the opportunities are, and how they can scale that business. And to be honest, it's more than property mentoring with these guys. It verges on business coaching, which, if I'm being honest, is what most of my mentoring tends to be. There's an element of that within most of my calls I have with my mentees. And people think a property mentor just bangs on about property strategies and how to make money quickly. But honestly, a lot of what I do is business coaching with my clients. I absolutely love that part because property is a business, obviously. And if you want to succeed, you need to treat it like a business. Now, another mentee of mine who is actually writing a book at the moment on this said to me last week that most people struggle with the mindset of going from being an employee and then becoming a business owner. And it's so true. It's so, so true. Becoming a business owner demands a completely different mindset. It's a completely different skill set, a completely different mindset, and a whole new approach that I think many people underestimate, if I'm being honest. And they just didn't even think about that side of things. Now, if you're thinking about a build, going back to Jack and John, if you're thinking about a build, if you're considering a development site at the moment, if you're planning a major refurb on a property, these guys can really help you with a site health check, and they can help you either save a load of money, save a load of heartache, make sure you've got the right contractor in place, make sure legally everything's tight. Honestly, who doesn't need a 600-point checklist to make sure your project is as good as you think it is? Now, I'll pop the link in the show notes for anyone that's interested in that. And you can take it from there. Right. I want to talk about something that came up recently with one of my other mentees. So I had a new mentee join me a few months back. And before she came to me, she'd spent 10,000 quid on one of those big name property trading programs out there. I'm not going to say who, but one of the big name property educators spent 10 grand on that. And she told me that she sat in a room full of people at their training event, and all the people in there were at different levels of experience, all with very different goals. And she said she just felt completely lost and like a fish out of water. And she had that feeling of impending doom, that she'd wasted her money and would walk away from their training events just feeling, at the end of the day, just feeling overwhelmed, just feeling like, oh my God, that's a lot of information. And she'd just feel lost and stuck. And she didn't have a clear plan. She was coming away with more questions than answers. So it really wasn't helping. And it was around this time that she stumbled across me online and how I approach mentorship. And now she's working with me. She feels heard. She can get all the help she needs. And our sessions are personalized to her specific needs and goals. So she's getting the property education and hand holding she needs with the daily support and the personalized training plan. And the takeaway from this is, look, don't pay silly money for these big name programs out there that are poorly designed, and their main intention, I'm going to break it to you here if you haven't already worked this out, their main intention is to upsell the hell out of you until you run out of money. Now that's their business model. That's what they do. They sell you a course, you get stuck. They sell you another course, you get stuck. They sell you another course. Guess what? You've now spent 15, 20, 30 grand. And look, I hear this a lot. Those big name programs out there that cost silly money, they just dump you in a room full of people, feed you a one-size-fits-all training, and it doesn't work for most people in the room because everyone's situation is different. Everyone's goals are different. Everyone's starting point is different. Now, if you're paying the crazy sums of money, like 15K plus, then you should be demanding one-to-one personalized support, not group coaching. You need someone who understands where you are today, where you want to get to, and you need someone who's going to hold you accountable and help you get there. That's what real mentorship looks like. So that's just 3 of my mentees, 3 different paths, 3 very different people, and 3 different types of results, and 3 different styles of mentorship as well in terms of how I help those people. They're all completely different, obviously. And that's what we're just trying to get across to people is one-size-fits-all training just doesn't work. It just doesn't. So Alex quit his job after 1 deal, remember? 1 deal, done, quit his job, and now he's full-time in property making money. Happy. Rhian is scaling her portfolio and changing tack, pivoting into serviced accommodation contractors. And Jack and John are building an amazing business. I'm so happy that I get to be a part of that. And the common thread here is they all took action. They all got the support they needed, and they all committed to building something real. Now, it wasn't get rich quick. It wasn't hyped up property strategies. It was just real down-to-earth advice, one-to-one, support when they needed it, and plenty of hard work that got those results. Now, if you're listening to this and you're stuck between one strategy and another, and you're confused and you don't really have momentum in what you're doing, and you don't know what to focus on, or you feel like the clock is ticking on your goals and you're just not getting anywhere, let's have a chat. Let's talk. There's a link in the show notes below to book a free 15-minute call with me. Let's have a chat about your goals, or DM me and let's chat. All the links you need to contact me and reach out and get the other things that I've mentioned in today's podcast, they're all in the show notes, or they're below. If you're watching the video version of the podcast, just look below, check the description, and the links are there. Now, that's all for this week's episode. I'll be back next week with another one. Until then, stay safe, take it easy, and thanks for listening.